Welcome, one and all. This is Dungeon Creation Live, and I am the DMG, and hopefully you can hear me. This is always going to be on the first Saturday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern. I apologize for the starting a little bit late. There was a few things I had to attend to. So, Sam, thanks for joining us. This is obviously one of these shows where we make stuff up as we go along. So, I fully expect things go into wild tangents. I would like to thank patrons on my Patreon for helping make these videos possible. That's patreon.com/70 system. Lucas fan, yo yo wubba dubba lubba dubba dubba. That's okay. All right. So I need some suggestions in the chat as to what kind of meta story we're going to do. What kind of world are we going to be building? So instead of doing just a dungeon or just a town, we're now going to talk about the overriding story as a whole. So, this is where we're going to talk about it's not just a single adventure, this will be multiple adventures, and we're going to use the same story structure guide that is available on the 70system.com website in the download section. And we're just going to build upon that to create a meta story arc. Alrighty, so suggestions in the comments. Once again, Sam, thanks for joining us. Of course, this is live and it relies on people to give me suggestions as to how to progress within this. I can run my game in 2 hours in this world. I have nothing planned at all. Well, exactly. I sometimes start the game a week. Okay, you find yourself in a tavern, and that's as far as I've got. Everything builds upon from there. So this is for the people who want to go beyond this, and usually my suggestion is that you only think of loose points as to where the story is going to go. So you're not going to flesh out the entire thing with NPCs and monsters and encounters and everything that's going to happen in a 10, 12, 15 session story arc. This is just what are the bullet points. So there's 10 or 15 bullet points as to what's going to happen in the story, and each bullet point is a session. So that's really what we're going to be talking about. So we'll start with genre, and if we can get some idea of what sort of genre you'd be interested in. How about a world with plateau that rise above an omnipresent fog? Okay, that's pretty cool. So yeah, so you have this world, which is now, of course, it's basically cliffs down to this omnipresent fog, which is like the flat Earth kind of idea. So you have even the world, the Discworld in the Discworld novels by Terry Pratchett. You've got the similar sort of idea where it's a disc on top of some elephants on top of a turtle. Same kind of thing, except there's just fog around it. Yeah, so all living people reside above the fog, so everything that dies lies below. So what we really need to then think about is, are these humans? Are they going to be rats, dragons, porcupines? What is the dominant species on this fog-encompassed world? While I'm waiting, I'm just going to find me a blank story structure sheet. I've got lots of scene and transition ones. We'll get to that in some other episodes, but yeah. Alright, I'm going to have to print out a new one. So, yeah, in terms of starting the campaign, we just want to know loosely what the world is. You'd want to start the campaign in a small section of this little world. So we're not going to go too far into what the world is, as a scope is. Rather, we just want to have a basic idea of the structure of this actual world. So we have this disk world and we have the fog. So humans as a basic race, and we could do some rare sub races. So rare sub races, we can then think of a species that may be more inclined to be antagonists to the human race. So species. So, like for instance, we have one species I've done is Darcy, which is the mole people. They live under the ground and they keep to themselves, and they basically humans put up with them because they generate high quality soil for farmers. So farmers tend to be, tend to like them. So we could have some kind of relationship that goes sour in that department, because Darcy are heavily reliant on their structure of contractual agreements, and somehow, somewhere, some human has broken some contractual agreement. That's one possible idea. I'm just going to print out this guide so that we have, well, at least I have something to work on. Of course, you can download it from the website so you can play along at home. Where are we now? PDFs. There we go, storage structure guide. Let's print this out. It's dead air. You can't have dead air. How dare you have dead air? There it is. Okay, so we've got some idea of what we want to do. Print, 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 print. Yeah, you could have that there's been the Darcy have over a few generations made it difficult for the humans to live on the lowlands, so all the humans now live in the mountains. So they are all mountain men. This machine's going off. Yeah, so mountain humans, so we could have mountain men. So humans are mountain men. I'm just going to write this in here. Mountain men versus Darcy. Or Dassies, which is an actual animal. A Hyrax. We could have a being that is made of smaller beings that fuse together. Stolen from Edge Dancer by Brandon Sanderson. Yeah, you could. I mean, it's a world you can basically build. I mean, we could sit here for days just doing that specific thing. So I think what we really need to start on is where this begins. So we've been talking about this in the world building playlist on my channel, starting small. So even though we have a very brief idea of what the world looks like, it's a disk that's surrounded by fog, and all the living creatures live in the non-fog, and all the dead creatures live in the fog areas, and that's all that's known of the world. And you have two dominant species. You have the humans who live in the mountains, and you have the Darcy who live below ground in the lowlands. The Darcy being a form of a mole person or Hyrax that is anarcho-capitalistic and relies heavily on contracts and things, and the contracts have been broken by humans, and hence they've had to move into the mountains to get away from the power of the mole people, which, it's just loose. Okay, so we need to start somewhere small, like a hamlet or a village or a neighborhood in a town, or could be just a hovel, a single hovel in the middle of nowhere. Some people homeless live in the fog or underdark, humans with slight mutation. Yeah. So you could have caves underneath the Darcy. So the Darcy is kind of like the peanut butter in the sandwich. So you've got humans above and humans below, but you've got mutant humans below, and you've got ordinary humans above. And then, of course, you will have the other races, like the elves and the dwarves and whatever, dotted throughout, but they're not as dominant as those two species. Water could be scarce due to high elevation, and it would start with moral dilemma involving a fight over water. That's a great thing. So I like the idea of it being a single hovel. So it's just this ramshackle hut is where you start, and your adventurers are just the people who live in this hut, and they are going to be attacked by some other horde that is after their water supply. So they live next to a spring, and a rival gang of humans is going to want to take over their water supply. So I'm going to write that down. Rival humans taking over water supply. Okay, so this is really the hook. So this would be an entire adventure based around them wanting to steal their water supply. So that they basically want to wipe out this hovel that these 2, 3, 4, 5 people live in. And, they're living here just to get away from it all. They're obviously friends or family or something to that effect. Former adventurers who just, trying to eke out subsistence living, in this hovel. I think the rival group of humans should have at least a semi-legitimate claim to that water. Yeah, look, you could do it as desperation. So they're, not having water becomes a very desperate situation. So I think then you'd want to think about their claim is that they need it. They need it to survive. One's claim, there's no such thing as land rights when it comes to just basic survival. It's like if you need water and there's water there, that's your. I'm going to have that. So I think it's just sheer desperation is probably better because it leaves it as morally ambiguous as to, and there needs to be something that basically means that the adventurers are going to have to go and sort out this clan of bandits or whatever. What would be really interesting is that they go to assault this band of bandits and they join them. So rather than destroying them and wiping them all out, they find out that they've, it's a whole group of families, they've got sick children, they don't have enough water, etc. And so the moral imperative is rather than wipe out all these people, let's share the water with them so that they grow from a hovel state to a hamlet, and incorporate that gang or loose group of hermits or whatever into their collective. So the hook then being the first session is really they're going to be attacked by these and they need to go and investigate what's happening, and they kill a couple of these people off, but they find out that there's as part of that adventure they find out that there's this roving band of these these bandits, and that leads to the next adventure when they actually discover this roaming band of bandits, and then they have to make the choice of to whether they're going to wipe them out or they're going to help them by joining together, and they have to negotiate terms and all that kind of thing. So the second session is more of rather than combat, is more social oriented. So they need to negotiate water rights or wipe out bandit clan. So this is starting to feel a lot like a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting, where obviously water is something that's extremely rare, and it becomes the commodity that everyone's looking for. I would like to think that materials like metal and stone will be hard to find because of the fog. Yep. So yep, that's one aspect of it. We can definitely rarity rarity is important because it breeds economy. We have something that you want, so we can then get more of what we want from you because you need that. You need what we have. Um, and that's what starts to bring. That's what starts to create factions and tensions and all that. So rarity is very important in the structure of having antagonists and things like that in a story. So yes, definitely would want to make metals and stone and that kind of stuff also rarer. And of course, if you say it's down the fog, you can then have these runs where people have to like run down there and quickly mine some metal before the fog rises. So these are all the kind of things you can build into the game. But that's the kind of detail we don't necessarily need in this sort of meta arc that we're talking about. So it's more about what are the points that we're going through. So we're 2 sessions in. So we've got the first, which is the hook, which, there's the adventurers live in a hovel together, eking out a subsistent living. They have a small spring that they survive off, and a rival group of human bandits come to attack them in order to gain control of this spring. The second session is discovering that these bandits have, they're a wandering tribe of people, families with sick children, and they don't have enough water and all this sort of thing. So it becomes more, the moral imperative is you're going to help them out. You're going to help fortify these people around the spring in order to form a community that you can protect going on in the story. So the next part of it is setting the clock. So the clock is, you've got a duration. So there must be something that's the fog is rising, which is like the winter is coming in Game of Thrones. Something to that effect where we're setting a defined point in the future that is putting a time limit on what's happening, or putting a very definite point in the future that needs to be achieved. But obviously, because this is a meta story, this would need to be much further on in time, but still defined. So something like the fog is rising, excuse me, is something that would be quite cool. So the water is coming out only sufficient for a set amount of people. The original group is older. The second group is families. Yep. So the original group, again, this is where you bring in your own flavor and your own sort of world dynamics and whatever. Whether they're older, younger, it doesn't really matter, purely because you just want to map out the specifics of where this is going to be going. So some people may want to run it where it's, old fogies, Cohen the Barbarian, again from the Discworld novels, the aged adventurers that come past and they're easily vanquished by level 1 adventurers. That can definitely be done. Or it's a more elite class of bandit. There may be only 1 or 2 of them, and you've got 4 or 5 players, and it's really a big stiff battle to try and defeat them. Again, however you want to play it out, it's still the same story point. It's still the same thing is going to be happening, but how it happens in terms of the minutiae of it doesn't really make much of a difference. Hi, Trendon, how are you? Okay. Water storage from springs has to be constant to result in usable amounts of water. Yeah. So they got to have some kind of mechanism to catch the water and all that kind of stuff. Again, you're just going to leave that up to when you're running the game as to how you're going to describe these sort of elements. So that's where it gets left up. When you're planning each individual session, then you will decide on these sort of variables. But again, because we're just looking at a loose story structure, you don't want to make it such as, if they go off on some kind of tangent, you need to be able to bring it back to the main storyline. Of course, you want railroading. Of course, it's railroading. Everything is railroading. There's no such thing as non-railroad. It doesn't actually exist. Every time you speak, you are railroading. If you say there is a table in the room, you are railroading. So the only way to not railroad players is to basically not speak at all, which basically makes the game impossible. But anyway, that's my tirade on railroading. There's always a railroad. It just depends on how wide the tracks are and how obvious the railroad is. But there is always a railroad. Okay, so the second part of the story structure is a choice whether negotiating the water rights or wiping out this clan. Obviously, you're going to play on their emotional sort of thing that, we'll be able to get some of these people farming and producing food and make our existence a lot better. So wiping them out, they don't really have anything that we need except for their human labor. So wiping them out doesn't really make much sense. Blah, 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 blah. Move on to the next. So then we start to talk about clock. So the fog is rising, is a defined thing, and I think we'll merge the clock and the mentor together. So one of the people in this clan is some old bloke who formerly worked in some university that's long gone, and he is an old blind sage who regales the tales of the rising fog from eons before, or something to that effect, and basically lays down what's happening in the world. So this is the third session we're talking about. So we're merging the clock and the mentor here. So the mentor is essentially going to give the players, the characters, an outline of what's happening in the world. So, but in snippets of information. So you're not just going to sit there for an hour just discussing what it is. He's just basically, you want the information to be extracted via questions. So you want the old man to say something that is intriguing, and then you want the players to ask the character the question in order to extract more information. You don't want to be in a situation where you're just sitting there and going, and then blah, 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 and then blah, 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 and henceforth blah, 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 and blah, 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 and you're sitting there doing a 20-minute spiel where the characters are not going to remember what on earth it is you were talking about. Rather say something insightful. It's like, it looks as though the fog is rising again. And the player's going to, what does he mean by that? And so they'll ask the character the question, what do you mean by the fog is rising again? Well, many years ago when I was being in the university or whatever, I came across this old tome that spoke about the days when the fog rose. And then it's like, what is the fog? Because they may know, at this point they don't know about the fog. So then it's like, okay, well, the fog, he explains, the world is but a disk, and surrounding the disk is this fog. And upon occasion, when happening in the world, the fog rises. And so, and then they say, okay, well, what happens when the fog rises? And then he says, well, because the fog is where all the people, all of those who have died have gone, we don't know much about the fog, only that it destroys everything in its path when it envelops the world. It chokes the world of life. So, this is bad. How do we know when this is going to happen? And then he says, well, by the fact that we're all living in the mountains, it's the fog is already rising, so we probably have a year left. We have 1 year, and there we go. We've set the clock. We've met the mentor, and he's giving them information. Now, he will then also drop in some key thing, and that is where they can go to figure out what this is. So he will say, I used to be in this university, and we had all these books, and I'm sure there were books on how to reverse this. The gods. There must be some way to contact the gods or to cast a spell or something to that effect. I'm sure we will find that in the library of Karth or Damradoon or something. So we're giving them a point to go, and we've set a time limit that within 1 year this all has to be done. Alright. Later in the game, there could be a race against seasonal fog levels to recover items that only peak out in the winter, and the top of the fog freezes, creating terrain hazards. Yeah, I mean, these are all the kinds of cool stuff that you can throw in. I mean, you know, literally, we started this broadcast 25 minutes ago, and already we've created this world, the story that's coming. So it doesn't take a lot to actually do these sort of things. And again, the minutiae of it is, once you've got these story points down, you can spend a lot of time on each little section to really develop the aspects of what's happening. So, yes, the fog rising is great, but of course they don't know about the fog at this point. We're in session 3 and they've only just learnt about the fog. So, much later on when they're in the outskirts of the world, then yes, of course, then we can start to introduce those kinds of things. So we're in the 3rd session now. We've grouped Clock and Mentor, and of course the next session would then be the Gateway. Now the Gateway does not literally have to be a gate. It does, although I love to literally use a gate, as I did in the Tilvertonians. It was literally a portcullis. What you can do is this test of one's ability to do things. So they're going to want to travel to this town or city where this university was located in order to find all this information. So the journey is the gateway. So they're going to go on this perilous journey. So this entire session is a perilous journey. So I should write in here, perilous journey. So if you're using the guide, that's where we're at. So fog is rising is the clock. Mentor, old, blind, wise. Ooh, my writing is terrible. Wise, sage. Books of knowledge at old university. So this is a session. Okay, that is a session, and these two are a session, and now we've got to Gateway, which is a session. So we're 4 sessions in. This is as much detail as we actually need. So this is all you really need to think about as to where this meta arc is going. And you can apply the dungeon structure to everything. So rooms, passages. So rooms are like the town, the passages, the road to the next town. The clearing in the forest is the room, and the passageway is the forest itself. So you can apply all these kind of things. And in 7D system, we have the structure of scenes and transitions. So scenes are like rooms, and transitions are like corridors. So, you always have a scene, and then a transition, and then a scene, and then a transition. So you always have room, corridor, room, corridor, room, corridor. If you have 2 rooms together, that's just one scene that has 2 rooms in it. And if you have 2 corridors, it's just one long transition. So that's the basic mechanics of how you would do it. And as you'll see on the website, there is the scene and transition guide, this thing here. Okay, and that breaks it up into setting the scene, struggle, mishap, and then you've got the reaction, bad options, and resolve for the transition. So that's very cool for when you want to break it down into scene, transition, and you really want to get down into the nitty-gritty of what's happening in your game. you can use that to break it out. But I'm a lot more free form than that. I kind of just stick to the basic story structure guide because the scenes and transitions just naturally happen as you play. So anyway, the gateway is this perilous journey to this university. Okay, let's check out the comments here. Yeah, the fog could be an underground race growing slowly in power. Absolutely. It could be a god, an angry god that is, rising or awakening. It could be evil that is awakening. I mean, you just personify something, you know. This is not a literal world. This is a figurative world, and it exists in someone's mind. And these are all the characters and the NPCs are all thoughts, and as the body of the mind ages, the fog is like an Alzheimer's that's just, depleting the world. So you can, there's a million and different ways to break it down into whatever you want. So again, you don't need to be super specific about it, because you can kind of just throw that into there later on and it just adds more flavor to what it is that you're doing. But you still need the structure, the skeleton of what it is to build upon it. So we've done the perilous journey to the university. So now they get to this ruined city where the university resides, and we get into the tests. So the tests part can actually be broken up into multiple sessions. So I would normally break it up into three. So you would break it up into social, combat, and exploration. So the one that probably would naturally come first is exploration. So they get to this city and they begin to explore the surrounds and explore the university and discover information. So that's the first part. The second part is they discover people living there. Okay, the natives. So these again are different sessions. So the first session is just exploring these ruins. So you can throw in combats with orcs that might live around there, or some lizard men, or some Darcy, or a tunnel worm that's been slowly devouring the city. It's totally up to you what you want to do. If you want to add all that kind of stuff in there, fantastic. Of course, there's going to be lots of loot lying around. People just left the city. Um, Again, flavor and add description and do with this as you please. So that's all part of the first part of the test is the exploration. So then it would be social interaction. So then you would find, for instance, you could find another clan of wandering families that they should join your clan. So you can give them respite, you can give them help, and give them a way to, point them in the right direction to find your little settlement you've created. Alternatively, you can also then have the natives who have their own water source, and they're very suspicious of you because you're coming for their water source, and you're trying to explain that the fog is rising, and we need to get heroes to do whatever needs to be done. And at this point, we haven't got all the information yet, so they're hanging around in this area, learning things. So the library is sending them to the mage tower, and the mage tower is sending them to the dungeon keep underneath the castle. So that all leads to the next part of the structure, which is the preparation, which we basically will then bind all these elements together. Yeah, it may have dropped. Um, Sorry about that. It might have been my internet that dropped it there. I'm not sure. I'll just see if there's. Yep. There's 9 people watching and only 2 people commenting. What's going on? Okay. And then, of course, the third test is combat. So this would be there'd be a big battle that happens, either with the clan that they've discovered, or helping the clan that they've discovered fight off brigands, or fighting off a preemptive attack from the people who are protecting their water source. Again, it's up to you as to what that should be. And yeah. Okay, Samuel, you're a little lost. All right. So tell me where you're up to so that I can repeat, because if the stream dropped, I won't know where it dropped. Oh, it comes and goes. It would have been 9, and then it could have been 7. I don't know. YouTube is not 100% accurate, I think, in that department. Okay, so if you've lost part of what I've been talking about, I'm just gonna run through this again. So we have the gateway, which is the perilous journey to the university. And then we have the tests, which is broken up into 3 sessions. The first is about exploration, the second is about social interaction, and the third one is about combat. So the exploration one is exploring this town where this university is and finding out that there's some rival factions or a clan that lives there, or there's monsters that are living in all the ruined buildings. The second part is social interaction, where you find that there's another clan living here, which they're again desperate for water or something, and you can tell them, you can send them off to your settlement, and then they'll have safety and whatever there, or they can be against you in terms of they're protecting their own water and they don't want anything to do with you, etc. So there's that social aspect happening there. And the third one is combat, where you're fighting monsters, and or this clan or bands of brigands that are coming to attack this clan. I don't understand the university. The sheet is also based on the Seven Pillar series. No, the sheet is actually based on the storytelling playlist. So on my channel, you'll find storytelling in RPGs under playlists. And that runs through the hook, the choice, the clock, the mentor, the gateway, the test, preparation, major event, reward, exit, death, life, and celebration, which are basically narrative points on a narrative thread, that helps you to structure a story and then apply your game elements to that. So that's what the sheet is. The sheet is just a way of structuring the flow of your story in order for your game to come about. The university in this sense was when we met the old man, the blind sage. He used to work at this university as a sage, or used to do a historian or something to that effect. And that's where all the books that talk about the fog and what the fog does and how you can stop the fog, etc., it all resides at the university. So the thing is, they've made this perilous journey, which is a session on its own, to this university. They discover it. The tests, the 3 sessions after that, are about exploring, finding out who lives there, and fighting off all the bad guys. And then the next session is the preparation. So now you're gathering all of the information as to how to defeat this fog, in the preparation. So it's collecting all the information together, finding out how it all links together, and putting this into practice. So yeah, the preparation is basically, if they found, so let's say the university has several different books that talk about different artifacts that they need. Okay, so you find that in the exploration phase, in tests, and then you get the artifacts through social interaction and combat. And the preparation phase is now you have all of these artifacts and you've got to figure out how to put them all together. So the preparation is putting the puzzle together. how to defeat the fog. Or some aspect of the fog. Ah, Spunkmeyer Senior, welcome welcome to this crazy last minute session. Um, yeah, so we're putting together the puzzle, how to defeat the fog, and then we'll move to the major event. So the major event is then they've got to put this plan into action. Yeah, so the fog, you don't really need to actually define the fog as to what it actually is. It's just a word that you're applying to something that it destroys. So it doesn't you when if players want to know what it is, they have to go on a journey to discover and read books and find out more about the fog, which gives you time and sessions to actually design what it is you want, and they've got to meet NPCs that give them another little piece of the puzzle. So you've got to gamify it rather than just going the fog is this and it does this. You need to gamify it. So you need to basically, well, if they want to know what that is, then they have to go through all these steps to find out, which they will then be interested enough in order to take those steps, or they will be completely disinterested, and then you don't have to explain it. So either way, you're either getting a good adventure out of it, or you're just moving along with the story. So you're going to, it's going to work either way. Yeah, so perhaps they'd have to drain the fog into the Underdark. Yes. So there's going to be some way to do that, some mystical machine or artifact or prayer or something that they've got to do. Similar to the similar to the red weed in War of the Worlds, absolutely. So that's we're coming up with what is the red weed that kills the fog, essentially. And again, because you will be designing this world yourself. You just put into place what you feel is going to be best for your players. So if they go, more of this alien stuff we've been doing, then don't do that. Do something else. So the major event is to basically they have to do what we talked about earlier, where they have to go down to where the fog is. So they're going to have to they go down a dungeon underneath this city. Okay, this is where the mega dungeon comes in. Now this major event can be several sessions long. So this doesn't have to be a one session thing. You can really do a whole Under the Tavern 5-session ordeal to get down to the bottom, which would be fantastic. In fact, the major event you could insert Under the Tavern here as a 5-level dungeon that you go through. You just change the beginning a little bit because obviously, in that it's like a functioning city. So here you could Under the Tavern, you go into the tavern instead of it being rats that have that are driving away the tavern keep's business. It's just the tavern keep is trying to hold on to his tavern, and he lives there with his child, and he's just fighting off bandits who are coming to try and steal his stuff, and he's just trying to protect his tavern. And the adventurers say, well, we need to get underneath your tavern. There's something down there we need to go to. And he goes, yeah, okay, that's great. Just don't stuff up my tavern. And then his son gives them the map. And so you've built in this whole adventure just by changing the beginning. And you can then do all the way down to, the bad guy's really on level 4, but you all the way down to the bottom and defeat that bad guy. And that is what stops the fog in its tracks, or the fog begins to reduce. So that's one way to build another huge adventure into that. So you could easily do another 4 or 5 sessions just on the major event. But that's where I would put the main dungeon. That's where all the stuff is going to happen. Of course, you can have that in the tests if you wanted to, but because don't think that the structure, everything has to be short or long. Everything's always got to be in the one section. If you want the hook to take 3 hours, let the hook take 3 hours and the rest of the game takes 30 minutes. That's fine. So long as it's interesting and it makes sense and it's best for the story, then do that. So here is like, the major event, we're using that to build out multiple sessions to get the solution we've created in the preparation session. We're now in the major event where we're going to drill down to setting the bomb at the base of the building or something. That's what this is. So I'm just going to write in there under the tavern, because I think that's a great way to just implement another 5 sessions straight away. Each level is a session, and you can then, you're building out quite a long story arc from this. And then you can use, because the way that Under the Tavern is written, elements that are in there can easily tie back to what's going on in this world. Yeah, you would also have to mod the tavern to remove all the water-based stuff for consistency. Well, you could keep the water-based stuff, but it's like toxic water. So it's not water you can drink, it's just all polluted. Or spoiled. It's like acid rain, when it's raining, it's acid rain. The fog could be controlled by a couple of beholders dreaming of it. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter what it is. It's just something that's, going to do that. I've incorporated Under the Tavern into my new 7D campaign as a sub-quest. Customers been driven off due to all the mothballs the tavern keepers laid in the cellar to keep the vermin down. That's cool. Alright, so once they've completed the major event, then there's the reward. So the reward is that the fog is going down. Now, someone's going to be pissed off about this. And so I think if the reward is that they've saved the world, and that the townspeople are going to be grateful and they're heroes, etc., like that. Or there may just be a whole sherbet load of treasure down the bottom that they're now going to haul back to their settlement. So their settlement are going to be wealthy in terms of metals, because of course coinages mean much in a dystopian future. There'll be a lot of metals and ores and all this kind of stuff, or spells of water purification would be fantastic. You happen upon a library full of water spells that, it's the lost library of water spellature that now allows them to purify water en masse. So that would be the reward. Now I would build this into the exit. So the exit is they've got to get out of this dungeon and get out of this university. So this is where former interactions in the tests, the social interactions with the clans, the combats that they've had, the monsters they've encountered, this is where there's going to be a lot more of them. So they've got to basically fight their way out. And we need to start a new clock. So it's now taken them, say, 9 months took them 3 months to travel to the city. Let's say 4 months to travel to the city, and they've been in the city for 5 months, and they need to really hot-foot it back, because they were trying to find their way in the beginning, but they know how to get back now. So it's only going to take them 3 months, but they've got to do it really, really quickly. So the exit then is basically a perilous journey back. So the reward, as we said, is basically giving them some kind of boon, which is going to help them in their settlement. So boon for settlement. Now, this could even be a god saying, thank you for vanquishing this evil. I will now bless you and your settlement. So that's a reward that's bestowed upon them. But that all leads immediately to the exit, which is the perilous journey back. Again, this is one whole session. So the reward and exit are basically merged together in one session. The major event was broken up in 5 sessions. So you can see that you can really massage the structure to, you know, almost like a concertina in terms of time as to how things fit together. Now, each one of these, you can do another one of these for each section. So each session can be broken down using this same structure. So this is the meta arc, as the title of this video says. This is the meta arc that basically controls the whole storyline of your multiple sessions. So the last three are death, life, and celebration. So death is if a character was going to die, that is the session where it's going to happen. It's where their perilous journey becomes ever more perilous. Okay, they arrive back at their settlement and it's wiped out. Where have all the people gone? So you can. There's a whole bunch of bodies lying around and whatever, and there's a sort of solemn moment where everything they've done is for naught because this settlement has been wiped out. You're not sure if the chat is broken or no one is talking. Well, it could be that no one's talking. Because the chat seems to be going through because it's on the video. So you'd see it on the video. You can see there's the replication of the chat on the scroll there. Anyway, so yes, if a character is going to die, this is really the session that a character would die in. So if they've got a lingering disease or something like that, this is where they would perish. And so this session is where they would discover that the settlement is gone, wiped out, something to that effect. And the next session is where they discover that they weren't wiped out. They just moved away because of some bandits or whatever. And the people, because of the boon that they've granted all the or the other clan that has helped, that has moved to help them from the one that you supported in the city, they helped band together and were able to defeat the invading horde or whatever. And so they were just hiding out, waiting for you to return, because they knew your return must be imminent. Yeah, so perhaps the fog going away causes problems until the fog is done going away. Yeah, so it's the fog going away would not be instant. It would just start to retract as fog does, and then it would be that in itself is going to cause problems. As the fog drops, whatever in the fog jumps out like fish jumping out of water. Yes, it's great. I mean, this is where you can start to implement all kinds of crazy stuff. Again, it comes down to the detail that you want to put in. If we were going to put in the detail of there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plus 5, 13, 14, 15, 16 sessions, we would be here for a lot longer than an hour. Because we can do an entire session just on this first block, because that's remember, these are sessions, so that's an adventure all on its own. So that's why we don't want to really get bogged down into the minor details. But these are all great ideas. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the quality of the ideas that you're putting up in the chat. It's just that obviously this is just the meta structure of what's going to be happening. So death is the settlement seemingly wiped out. And then the next two, life and celebration, I think you can just merge those two together. So life is they discover that the people are alive. Not all of them have been wiped out. They are alive. The kids are okay. and there is a celebration. So that as a session on its own, the remnants of the bandits that had, or orc horde or whatever had attacked them, or the remnants of the fog or whatever, is just draining away, and it's like the final little battles or skirmishes to kind of rid the land of all this pestilence and vileness and evil, and that is essentially the end of the campaign. Now, in D&D terms, I don't know how many levels one would get through 16 sessions. I don't know how powerful the characters would become, but this is all very doable in pretty much any fantasy-based system. So, finding villages and combating the remnants. So that is 16 sessions. Just major event, just break that up into 5. So yeah, 16 sessions. So if you were playing along at home and you were writing us down, you throw in your own ideas. For each one of those, you can print out another one of these. So for the hook, you do another whole one of these for that adventure, and flesh it out as you go. And of course, if you want to flesh it out in even more detail, you can go through the scenes and transitions. And if you watch those videos on my channel, you'll find out how you can break these up and how you set the scene. Then you set a struggle and what happens in the mishap, and then the reaction, the bad options, and the resolve. And that will keep you in gaming for quite a considerable amount of time. So it has been about a few minutes less than an hour. Thank you very much for joining me. I know it was very last minute that I put this up, and I'm sorry that it finished late. Started late, sorry. Didn't finish late, it finished slightly early. Thank you to the patrons on Patreon who help make these videos possible, some of them in the chat as we speak. And thank you to everyone who has watched this video after the fact. If you want to see this video live, it is the first Saturday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern, which is Sunday in Australia for those Australians who are watching. But there are a lot more Americans who watch, and therefore that's why I do the time as 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, the first Saturday of the month. So thank you for joining me. I now have to go and get a drink of water. I didn't have a glass with me, and my voice is beginning to strain. So good luck with your storytelling, and I'll see you in all the future videos and next month.